Hi, and welcome everybody at another LinkedIn live session from Skyline. My name is Ben, and today I would like to have a chat with you about resource management and workflow automation, and more specifically, agile resource management and workflow automation, because the world around us is changing very, very quickly, and the way we manage resources and the way we design and build workflows is changing completely. And it's very important to understand what the very nature is of those changes and how we can address those. So today we really want to talk about how we can really connect people, functions, and technology systems and platforms together into one unified environment, an environment where people can create and design solutions and deliver services in a much more efficient and innovative way. It's really about creating a future-proof agile data-driven operation. And to understand what it is that we're talking about and to look at those new technology innovations that we deliver with our DataMiner platform, it's important to understand in the first place what we are talking about. And essentially, it's digital transformation. Digital transformation is something that any organization in the world is looking at. If you look specifically in our domain, whether you're a media company, whether you're a service provider, whether you're a data provider or an IoT business, it doesn't really matter, okay? If you look at it at the bottom, you have a complete technology stack, a technology stack that has changed very, very quickly, a technology stack that is built with all IP technology, all IP connectivity, a lot of virtualization hardware being replaced by software components. We have an abundance of cloud services that we can leverage and integrate into our operation and start using it to deliver new types of services. But one of the key things there is that all those technologies, all those new generations of features and capabilities and services and products, they are enabling technologies. Technologies that allow us not to do just one thing, but we can use them in many different ways. You could look at it as the basic ingredients, the ingredients for an organization, for a company to bring everything together and to start innovating and to start delivering sophisticated services to customers and end users. That's your fabric, okay? Those are the ingredients. But the key thing here is that that fabric needs to be utilized. It needs to be shaped, and we need to create solutions. And essentially, you do that in a context of a world that is evolving very, very quickly. And that's one of the key things that everybody has to realize. We have to expect the unexpected. We don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. New competitors, new business models, new technology innovations that really come in waves again and again and again. And we have to adapt to that. It's impossible to predict the future. So that's the reason why everybody is looking into agility. How can we create an agile operation that continuously can evolve and where we can prioritize in what direction we take that operation? So that's really the environment that we're living in. So that means we need to be very conscious about the opportunities, because that new ecosystem that you see there at the bottom, that's really, something that gives us scalability, resilience, untapped potential. We can do so many things. There's endless options, endless opportunities. We have on-demand resources. We're not obliged to invest huge amounts of money in fixed resources, but we can just leverage them on demand. And those are great capabilities that we want to leverage and that we want to exploit. But at the same time, of course, it also comes with a new set of challenges. Challenges such as, for example, complexity. Typically, those ecosystems are far more complex and more difficult to manage, and especially if something goes wrong, to find the root cause, for example, and all those things. It's about nonlinear behavior. People may do something that seems completely harmless, and suddenly, unexpectedly, whatever it is that they're doing, a single firmware update or a single configuration change, and suddenly it ripples through the entire ecosystem and causes major problems, for example, throughout the entire platform, even resulting in a complete outage worldwide, for example. Non-linear behavior. Security, top of mind of everybody. If you're impacted by security incidents, the consequences can be quite big. So we have to be conscious about that. Inherent disaster, apparent stability, etc., etc. So we have to be very conscious about that. Now, ultimately, it's all about building workflows, doing automation, orchestration, etc. Simple technology workflows. For example, if you're serious about security, you would look into saying, hey, what happens if I have to introduce a new piece of equipment, a real hardware product, into that environment, a new IP switch, for example? What is the process to onboard that? It will automatically be detected, for example. We need to verify what firmware version it has. Does it have the proper firmware version in terms of security? That's very important. If it doesn't have, what's the process to update and upgrade that? So that's a very simple example of a very simple workflow that is very essential in this type of environment. And of course, you have all kinds of technology workflows, and it goes all the way up to being able to spin up services and to tear down services on a per need basis, because the flexibility, the scalability, the elasticity, and the on-demand nature is very interesting, but you have to use it very wisely. So being able to build and design services in that environment is equally very important. But of course, it's not only about the technology workflows, okay? It's about much more than that. DataMiner indeed has the ability to manage all those resources in a very flexible manner. But ultimately, it's also about business and operational workflows. We work together and we collaborate with other organizations. We have events, we have jobs, we have bookings, we have invoices, we have tickets, we have incidents that need to be managed. So there's a whole world around that technology ecosystem that also has to be considered. And in that world, ultimately, what we want to achieve, because these are the typical goals of digital transformation that are very important, that everybody always should have on top of mind, and that's to empower employees, for example. Number one, giving people the environment where they can really be empowered with data and information and use of easy to use workflows in that environment. That's also, why security is important. If people feel uncomfortable because of the complexity in that environment, they will not be able to really work very efficiently. So creating an environment that is secure, but at the same time where people can feel comfortable to do what they need to do to achieve their goals is very important. So empowering people with data, information, workflows, and those things is one of the key objectives there. The other thing is about the engagement with third parties. We all work as organizations with different companies and different providers and suppliers and customers, etc. We live in a platform world, a platform economy. So the strength of your platform is your ability to interact in a digital way with other platforms. So really looking at how can I create that digital experience in the interactions with other organizations. It's about optimizing your operation. If you just invest 20 million into an all IP stack, or you start using cloud services, optimization is extremely important. And you could say, well, optimization doesn't apply to cloud services. It does apply. It applies very much because, yes, it's easy. It's on demand. You don't really have to worry. You don't have to make up front investments, but inefficient utilization of cloud resources can really drive up the bill, the invoice that you get at the end of the month. It's a very classic challenge that people have because of lack of automation, because of errors and problems with planning and all those things. So optimization of resources, optimization of the utilization of those resources is equally very important. Now, the other thing that is very important is, of course, transforming your products. That's the innovative part. That's where you look at those key ingredients and you try to come up with new paradigms where you try to create new services and new experiences for customers. So that's really the picture that we're looking at. And creating that entire environment, that's what we're talking about. How do we manage all those resources at the top, at the bottom, and how do we design and build powerful automation, orchestration, and workflows to make this picture a reality? And it's not so difficult. If you look at it, in terms of how we evolved over time, it's very important to realize that in the past, it was all about the core infrastructure. Irrespective of what type of service you provided, everybody was building a hardware-based fixed infrastructure, which was very similar from one company to another, independent of what type of business you were in. So that was the most important thing, that core infrastructure that was carrying the services. And over time, we started deploying some tools, maybe a remote monitoring tool, for example, to get visibility on the status of that infrastructure. And we gradually introduced some new tools and features and capabilities. But as we are transitioning into all IP, virtualized, cloudified world, the key thing is that the gravity point of what is really important is shifting from the center to that outer ring, okay? Because everybody can invest in what you find there in the center. Everybody can install switches, everybody can purchase cloud services, everybody can install a piece of software. But the way you do it, the way you design and orchestrate and manage that environment, that's where you can differentiate. If you take the picture that I just showed you from digital transformation, and you can make that reality. That's your DNA. That's the strength of your company. That's the strength of your operation. How efficiently can you do it? How easily can you evolve with that operation? And everything that defines that is on that outer circle. It's all about how you can orchestrate, automate, manage those resources that you have at the center. That's the key differentiator between you and any other organization. And that's what we're talking about today. Now, in the new world, what is very important is to realize that what is agility all about? It's actually a pretty simple thing. Okay. On one hand, you can see that over here, your energy, your time, your resources, your financial capabilities are finite. No matter what they are finite. There's only so much things that you can do on a daily basis. On the other hand, you live in a world where you have infinite options. You can continue to invest in security and new services and infrastructure and components, etc., etc. Everything revolves around how good are you in translating that finite energy in effective value for your business. Okay, how can you go into that infinite world with infinite options and create and design solutions and deliver services in the more, the most efficient way, in the most innovative way? And that creates a little bit of a situation where you really have to be very careful. On one hand, you want to make sure that when you build the technology stack, when you build that digital transformation picture, that you make sure that certain things are coming by design, as I say, out of the box. Dealing with security, dealing with complexity, that's not where you want to spend your energy. You want to create an environment where those things are dealt with automatically by design. Whatever the teams and the people are doing, automatically, complexity, security, and those things that are challenging, those things are automatically taken care of. But you also want to provide maximum freedom. And the freedom needs to be in the creative part, because that's what we are. All the engineers in the world are becoming creators, designers. You need to be able to design workflows. You need to be able to evolve those workflows and the way you run your operation. So you want to make sure that on one hand, by design, out of the box, people don't have to worry about security and complexity and all those things. And you want to build an ecosystem that does that. And at the same time, it empowers the teams to create and design new solutions and new capabilities and new ways of working in that new world. So that maximum freedom in terms of workflows and utilization of resources is extremely important. Now, the thing I want to talk about today is what we call the DataMiner Digital Transformation Suite. Okay, this is a new set of functions in the DataMiner system, because that's ultimately what DataMiner is. It's a set of functions that allow you to do many different things in many different ways, and some people use some of the functions and some people use other functions depending on your environment, because it's also a very open platform that allows you to combine different products in different areas. But it's a set of functions that enables organizations to digitize their entire operation, and literally their entire operation. So wherever you have gaps in your workflows, you can start looking at leveraging the DataMiner Digital Transformation Suite to start digitizing and making sure that your entire operation is captured in that environment, okay? And then you can enable it to leverage that automated digital workflow, to start building and designing those workflows, to evolve those workflows, and to transform your business, and to do that continuously. If something like COVID happens and the focus is remote work, remote production, and all those things, this environment enables you to do that. Tomorrow, we will have different priorities. So it allows you really to transform that business continuously depending on your priorities. And again, before we jump in, it's very important we do that in that world which is completely different as compared to whatever we had in the past. So we have to think about, okay, how can we do this? And it has to be data driven. We have to make sure that all the teams have the ability to continuously and easily evolve with their workflows, with their user interfaces, the way they work, the way they design services. It's really about saying, hey, whatever the goals are of the company, we need to empower people to contribute to those goals independently. They need to have that flexibility to make decisions and to make those evolutions continuously. And again, dealing with challenges out of the box, complexity, security, non-linearity, those things, if you have to spend energy and time on that, it's wasted. It should be coming out of the box as much as possible, so people can really focus on the creative part, the part where they can make a difference and they can contribute to those goals and those ambitions. Now, when it comes to resource allocation, if you look at an operation, pretty much everything is resources. Okay, so today I'm not only talking about a switch or a router or an IP connection or a cloud service. Everything is really a resource. It could be an IP address, it could be a person, it could be a contract. Everything is essentially resources. And we know in the past, we've always talked about, and everybody has done that with different words, and depending on what you're talking about and what the context is. It's about scheduling, it's about planning, it's about jobs, it's about events or bookings or an inventory of resources, it's about rostering, etc., etc. Now, one of the very important points I want to make here is that in the past, we've always had habits for some of the resource allocation and planning and those things to do offline planning. In other words, people were taking care of it. It could be on a simple post-it, it could be in an Excel sheet, or some more bespoke, more sophisticated, but still bespoke offline scheduling tools. No matter what it is, whether it's a post-it or an Excel or a more sophisticated solution, it's an offline planning tool. It's disconnected from the real world. Now, the key thing that is happening today is that we have an ever increasing dynamic and volatility in our operation and the way we work for a lot of reasons. There could be things like, for example, plant maintenance coming up. There's things like, for example, on-demand resources, cloud resources. They are on demand, so there's no fixed inventory. Licenses, there's no fixed inventory. Last-minute changes, breaking news, incident and failures, for example. But also the business model from yesterday could be shifting tomorrow. We used to live in a world where business models were kind of something that we designed and we used for many, many years. Today, business models are also continuously evolving. So that means the way we manage our resources is immediately also impacted by that. Operational changes, different expectations from customers. So, and essentially the whole point is that resource allocation, resource management, the way we do it is very much a very integrated component of the entire operation and the whole endeavor to automate the environment. Okay, so it's really about being able to shift from one world, the old world, to the new world. And one of the key points I want to make also is that what I see quite often is that people have the habit of doing offline planning, and they do understand somehow that this is shifting into a new dynamic. But if you try to take the offline planning and say, hey, we are going to integrate offline planning with an automated environment, it becomes extremely, extremely challenging. It's kind of almost like saying, hey, we used to keep track of IP addresses in an Excel, and we're going to go to a dynamic world. So let's try to integrate that Excel and do the allocation still manually, but integrate the Excel with a DHCP server, for example. No, the resource allocation is a completely new animal, a completely new dynamic, a completely different thing than in the past. So we should not be looking at trying to mimic what we did in the past and integrate it into that new environment. Resource allocation, resource utilization is a completely new animal. So moving on, I just want to kind of sketch a little bit the picture first, what we're looking at. If you look at a DataMiner system in the past was always, kind of like all the technology environment that you have. You could have anything from a studio, contribution, satellite links, data links, OB vans, all the way to OTT clients, IoT type of applications, complete technology ecosystems. And of course, the beautiful thing with a DataMiner system is the data acquisition capabilities are tremendously powerful. Okay, so we had the capability already to basically ensure that everything out there could be brought into a DataMiner system. And essentially what we do is we create a digital twin. If you could look inside the memory of a DataMiner system, you have a full picture, a full real-time representation of everything out there, whatever the technology ecosystems are. And this is, of course, a huge advantage because every digital transformation today starts with the foundation of a digital twin. You build a powerful digital representation of the real world. On top of that, you typically have your workflows, the processes, the automation, the orchestration. Of course, with the huge benefit that whatever is out there, whatever the nature, the product, the domain, the vendor, the type of technology, whatever it is, on-prem or in the cloud, whatever it is, it's completely standardized. Elements, functions, resources, everything is completely standardized. So you have your workflows, your processes, your automation, your orchestration, and then we have what we call the data consumption layer, where people start interacting with that environment. And again, it's a very open architecture. We have our DataMiner clients, but you can also take, for example, Power BI or Grafana as dashboards, for example, and plug them into that environment to empower people to consume data. Because in an agile context, you really want to make sure that people have those modular choices. They can easily choose whatever is the best fit for their type of environment. Now, if you take that picture and you kind of flip it around and you look at it from a different perspective, DataMiner is essentially a set of functions. Okay, a set of functions that allow you to build and design solutions which are the best fit for your operation. It could be, perfectly possible that from one deployment to another deployment, you would see a different set of functions being used. It depends also on your environment. For example, some people would use DataMiner as their inventory and asset management system, and we have those features and capabilities. Other people would say we have an existing inventory and we integrate with that. So depending on the circumstances, different functions can be used depending on your strategy, your legacy systems, etc. And of course, if you have a cloud-connected DataMiner system, okay, that automatically unlocks a whole range of new functions. Okay, functions such as, for example, the ability to interact with chatbots, to take my Microsoft Teams and to interact with any parts of my operation in a chatbots mode. I can talk and communicate with a DataMiner system in a group conversation together with all my colleagues. Or I can take a dashboard, a live real-time dashboard, and I can share it with anybody in the world just in a split second in a secure, scalable manner. And a lot of other capabilities, but that's not what we want to discuss today. Essentially, a DataMiner system allows you to use those modular functions and capabilities to decide how you build and design your environments. And you could do that also in combination with a lot of other products, okay? Again, in an agile context, you want to make sure that everybody can leverage the tools they love and they find to be the best fit in their environment. And whether you want to basically, have DataMiner manage certain resources directly, or you want to go through Prometheus, or you want to control and orchestrate certain assets directly, or you want to go through an Ansible, it doesn't really matter. Okay, those options are there and you can start leveraging that. And that applies as well on the consumption layer. I already gave you the example. You want to use Power BI or you want to use DataMiner dashboards, it doesn't matter. And in a typical situation, you will find different teams using different tools. Now, what I want to talk about today to really get to the point here is I'm not going to talk too much about actual automation and orchestration. Okay, I'll touch upon that at the end. I just want to specifically talk about the ability to design those workflows, the ability to digitize your entire operation, the ability to empower people with powerful user interfaces to do what they need to do. And so essentially, we're going to go through those different layers here, knowing that behind us, we have that very powerful DataMiner system already that I just give you a little bit of a summary on. So we want to look at, how can we bring any data into a DataMiner system? Business data, operational data, technology data, which is already there, of course. And how can we design any workflows, but in that agile context, because we have that complete technology environment, a very complex, very diverse environment, but we really want to empower different teams, different people across the organization, even across multiple organizations, okay? And how can we really empower those people to work with that environment in the most efficient way possible? And how can we empower them to do that in a way where they can easily evolve themselves, not having dependencies on other departments? So I want to show you how you can create a real digital model of your entire operation. B, I want to show you that you can design end-to-end processes and workflows, how you can really create workflows that go all the way through, touching upon people, touching upon technology, and going even across multiple organizations. And last but not least, I will show you, once that digital model is there, once you can design all those workflows that you need, how you can create apps and APIs tailored to specific roles. because everybody in the organization is part of a different team, has a different goals, has, everybody needs to collaborate together, but everybody has a different perspective on the operation. Everybody plays a role in that, and everything needs to be really connected all the way through. And we want to make sure that we can do that across any boundaries: platform boundaries, team boundaries, organization boundaries, technology boundaries, you name it. All of that needs to be fully transparent. So zooming in a little bit, in the first place, I'm going to start talking about what we call the DataMiner object modeling. Okay, DataMiner object modeling is basically at the bottom. That's kind of where we start digitizing the operation and we enhance that digital twin. And I will talk about that in just a second. The second step is how can we create workflows? And again, very powerful workflows. It could be workflows such as, for example, we receive a purchase order from one of our customers that we need to execute, and we need to go through an entire process of planning that specific event. For example, the Olympics. We need to get OB vans. We need to, for example, set up IP contribution links. Another team may have to do a production job, etc., etc., etc. So it's a very, comprehensive process that runs through the entire organization. Actually starts maybe with another different organization, and how that flows entirely through that entire workflow. But the workflow could also be, simple thing like I mentioned at the start. What happens if we plug in a new IP switch? That IP switch is being discovered. We need to verify, for example, the firmware version. What happens if it doesn't have the proper firmware version? Or when it has the proper firmware version, the next step is to have a baseline proper configuration on that unit. So all those workflows exist. That's what a business is all about. Our world is full of workflows, and the objective is really to create a powerful end-to-end capability. Now, pay attention when I say end-to-end. The goal with DataMiner is to provide the user with a unified experience. And you may have seen already that when I will talk about process automation, after we talk about object modeling, okay, we will talk about DataMiner process automation, but you see already some third-party examples in there. Because again, modular, open architecture. In other words, we fully support the ability to say, hey, we have certain workflows that exist in a Power Automate, Microsoft Power Automate environment, or in a ServiceNow environment, or Salesforce, or whatever it may be that you have. It has to be possible to take those workflows and to extend them seamlessly through a DataMiner system, maybe back into a third-party system and back into a DataMiner system. It doesn't matter. In an agile world, you want to empower people to use the tools that they love, that they like, for the pieces of the business that they have. So open modular capabilities are very important. And again, once we know how we can enhance our operation with the object modeling, and once we looked at how we do process automation in that very open modular fashion, we will also look at, what are the user interfaces like? What kind of evolutions do we see there? And we will look at what we call no-code apps in DataMiner, a new innovative capability that allows people to empower teams and individuals with an entirely new generation of user interfaces that kind of is completely different in terms of the paradigm of having bespoke, fixed, proprietary user interfaces. And you can find this also in other environments. If you go to, for example, a Microsoft Office 365 environment, you will find also, for example, things like Power Apps, okay? And I will show you also that also on that layer, you can have a mix of different technologies. Again, open, modular capabilities. You use what you think is the best fit for your environment for every piece of the entire chain. But ultimately, the end goal is to have a rich end-to-end digitization, of your entire operation, whatever it is, to be able to build extremely powerful workflows so people can focus on their goals and being creative and doing what they need to do, and how we really redefine how people can interact with that operation. Okay, so that's really what we want to talk about. So number one, stateful object modeling. And what is stateful object modeling in DataMiner? To put it very easily and simple, it's about further expanding that digital twin. Okay, because I talked to you already about it. What is DataMiner? DataMiner is a platform that manages vast technology ecosystems on the ground, in the cloud, software, hardware, products from over 800 different vendors, over 7,000 integrations, no matter what kind of protocol. One of the most powerful platforms. So DataMiner already has a digital twin that represents the entire technology landscape in a unified, standardized way, which makes it really, really interesting in terms of security, ease of use, to the efforts required to do orchestration and automation and those things. So the stateful object modeling is really an enhancement. Why? We're expanding that digital twin because our world exists of many different things. Okay, it's actually one of the things that makes us human. We have the ability to come up with abstract concepts and to define those concepts and to use that to organize our world, to organize our life. It's the same in a business. The same way you have a definition of what money is, or a government, or a country, or a nation. The same way in our businesses, we basically make abstractions. We say, hey, we have jobs, we have tribes, we have squads, we have partners, we have contracts and rate cards. We organize events, and events are basically resulting in jobs. We do plant maintenance. We have plant maintenance jobs. We have tickets to follow up on incidents and to drive activities. We have goals. We have OB vans, we have squads, we have facilities, we have studios, we have channels or services, we have people, we have training sessions, we have, you can make up so many different things. But if you look at it, your entire world consists of these objects. And to the extent that they are well defined, that's what really glues together different departments, different teams, and different activities. So stateful object modeling, and some of those are 100% abstract. They don't exist in the real world. A team is a virtual concept, a squad. An IP address, of course, does exist. It's also a resource. Could be satellite capacity, for example. An OB van, for example, is actually a physical object. So it could be really anything, okay? It's all about being able to model and digitize that. So essentially what we're talking about, if I go back to the first picture, it's all about taking that digital twin that you see there at the center, where we already have a very exclusive proposition in the sense that we have already a full real-time representation of the real world out there, whatever it is that you have. But today with stateful object models, what we're talking about is essentially the ability to enhance that digital twin, okay? And to basically say, hey, we need contracts, we need rate cards, we need OB events, we need teams, we need organizations, we need IP addresses that need to be managed. Whatever it is in your world, the stateful object modeling capability in DataMiner allows you to really very quickly and very efficiently integrate that into your digital twin. So, and creating a digital twin with any type of object is really very powerful. First of all, if you create objects, of course, it's a very rich capability. You can say, hey, a contract has a title, has a reference ID. An OB event has a license plate, but it also has capabilities, for example. So everything has properties. And again, we cannot go through all the details, but some of the properties may be mandatory, or others may be optional. Or they can have different types of values that you can choose from, or they can have default value tooltips, or they can reference other object types. For example, a contract is linked to an organization or a customer record. So all those things are in there for you to leverage. But one of the key things is that it has a user-definable life cycle. And of course, I'm just going to address that in just a second. And lastly, it's very tightly integrated. So we have that very powerful digital twin, but if you start using this modeling, you're basically really enriching that entire environment. And the same dashboards, the same GQI queries, the process automation, the orchestration, the resource manager, keeping track of utilization of resources, all of it really has immediately out of the box the capability to leverage those new objects. So that means, for example, if I take the last one, the resource manager, if I decide that a person or an IP address is actually a resource as part of my automation that needs to be managed in terms of availability and where it's used at what point in time, I have that capability right out of the box available for me. Now, the user-definable lifecycle is also a very important aspect. Okay, and I took a very simple object here, a task. Okay, a task is something that we use to organize our to-dos and who's going to do what at what point in time. I could have taken a contract, I could have taken an IP address, I could have taken an OB event. It doesn't really matter. Okay, it's an object. So a task, of course, has its properties: a title, description, a state, a due date, etc. But the life cycle is very important. So I can define, or you actually can define, because the whole goal is that you can create these objects and design these objects and evolve these objects. But a task, for example, you can decide to say, hey, if a new task is created, it is in a state request. As soon as a due date is assigned, it is scheduled. As soon as somebody picks it up and starts working on it, I want the state to be in progress. And once somebody flags it as being finished, done, the state goes into done. So those are the states of that object. And again, they can be anything. Okay, and we will see then that all these state transitions are completely open to be managed in an automated or manual fashion. Okay, so we have the ability then to integrate that into our automation and our orchestration out of the box with very, very little effort. Of course, this is just one example. Okay, in reality, if I would take, for example, OB event, you would see that. Oh, okay, I got a notice here that the sound is pretty bad. Let me see if I can switch my mic. Go into my settings. Sorry about that. Is this better? I hope it's better. I'm just going to continue. So if the audio is not good, they'll probably indicate it to me. But what I was going to say is that, for example, here we have an OB van. Let's say an OB van, for example. If an OB van is coming into the system, we could say, okay, by default, it's inactive. If we take an action activating it, it becomes, in-house. If a driver checks it out, it becomes in transit. If a driver reports as being on-site, the state becomes on-site. So those life cycles and the transitions of those life cycles is something that everybody can model. Okay, and the transitions we will see that later, but transitions could be automatically upon conditions or things happening, for example, or it could involve a person or a human clicking on a button or doing something. But that's the important thing that happens in the background. Every one of those objects, every individual object has such a life cycle. Now, the other thing that is very important is, of course, as I said, it's fully integrated. Okay, it's not just about creating those objects and they exist in that memory in there. No, we can interact with those objects, obviously, with all the other functions that we have in a DataMiner system, whether that be process automated functions, service and resource management functions, or our automation engine. It doesn't really matter. If I want to take a dashboard, the same way I can take a CPU load and basically put it on a dashboard, I can take the state of an OB van and show it on the user interface, for example. Or I can take a list of IP addresses and look at, who's using which multicast IP addresses, for example. So all that information is in the same way as the operational data available. It's a single unified data lake with the same standard structures, the same type of interactions. And that's really what makes it very powerful. Now, hold on. Okay, this was the first part, the object models. We will see the end result of that. So keep it in mind. We have that enrichment of that digital twin. The second thing I want to highlight is the DataMiner process automation. Okay, we know that our world is full of processes, all kinds of processes, and I already mentioned some. Okay, we have a new switch that is detected. We need to check the firmware. If the firmware is right, we can continue. If it's not right, we have to do an upgrade. If we have to do an upgrade, maybe we have to first schedule a plant maintenance, whatever it may be. But for example, it could also be file-based workflows. For example, we have a new file-based content that comes in, and we need to go through certain steps to manage that file-based content. Or it could be, for example, a request or a booking coming in that needs to be approved, that needs to be converted into jobs for different departments that need to do different things. Your world, our world, is full of processes, okay? But the most beautiful thing about the DataMiner system and the solution that we have here is that you can build processes and workflows which are basically either technical, operational, business, or a mix of all of them. And that's a very powerful proposition. So It could be, again, about monitoring and control of file-based workflows, a more technical type of environment, onboarding and offboarding of resources, for example, doing things like plant maintenance or diagnostic workflows, for example, or incident resolution. But it could also be about the business where you have a booking coming in, for example, and a booking that needs to be translated into jobs for different teams and people need to be allocated, etc. It could be about managing a workforce in the field, for example, in your HFC network to do certain maintenance in the field. It could be really anything. As we all know, our world is full of workflows. But the beautiful thing is that you have that unified digital twin here. You have the ability to touch up on everything in your operation, whether it's on the top of that digital transformation picture or at the bottom in your technology, and it seamlessly connects together. So that's one of the most beautiful things about the solution. But there's more, okay? Process activities. So every block in that process, okay, we have a workflow, we have a process there. We go from one activity to another. Those are process activities. In a DataMiner solution, again, we're big advocates of open architectures, choices, options, etc. Those activities are open source. In other words, you can leverage existing activities that we supply already, that we design already. But should you be in need of a very specific new type of activity, for example, let's say you want to have a simple activity at some point in your process to do a ping to an IP address, for example, a provisioning of a satellite data link, okay? And at some point in the process, you want to do a simple ping to verify if that connectivity is there. If that should not exist, you actually have the ability, the power to create very easily and efficiently your own activity to do that. So open source activities are very important. Of course, we are supplying a complete library of process activities for all kinds of functions and in all kinds of domains. Is it about discovering, run an activity to do a scan to discover resources or to provision resources or to update firmware or software, or, for example, to automatically allocate a rack position so that this piece of equipment automatically appears on the user interface in that graphical visual overview on the right position in the rack. Or it could equally be about, for example, changing an alarm template. For example, a resource goes into maintenance, okay? So as soon as that resource goes into maintenance, we want to swap the alarm template so that we don't have any problems with the knock or the other people being alarmed about things going on with that resource. It's in maintenance, so you want to swap that alarm template. And again, in a lot of other domains, creating an event, approving an event, creating a job, triggering an invoice to a customer, for example, creating a ticket, updating a ticket, creating a Teams channel on Teams during an event to manage an event, or during an incident to manage an incident. I mean, there's no limitations there to what we can achieve with process activities and how we can really build that very rich environment where people can be building workflows really across the entire organization. Again, open source, they will be available on our cloud-based catalog. People can share it, they can collaborate on designing these and deploying these easily, to any of their DataMiner systems. Designing and deploying processes, we don't have too much time to go into all the details, but we are about to release a first version of our process creator, okay? This is a user interface where you have a list of all the processes that you want. You will have all those functions available over here, and you can just drag and drop and start connecting all the different functions and design those end-to-end processes. So it's going to be a very easy and transparent way, but again, touching up on the business, the operations, the technology, all in a single consolidated environment, okay? With the ability to also go from these processes into third-party environments. Again, whether that be Salesforce or ServiceNow or Microsoft Office, for example, it doesn't really matter, okay? We just want you to be empowered to create the most powerful workflows and processes in your environment. And of course, as we will just see, remember, we have the objects, we have the processes, we also have the ability to display those processes, okay? So all of this is going to come together. The objects, those processes that we designed with those, rich activities that we bring together in one environment, all those things will come together in just a second. And of course, you can then visualize those processes, track those processes, and see them in a live environment. And all of this comes together now into the user interface, okay? And again, we have to remember, we live in a world, agility. DevOps. We need to continuously evolve. We have to maximize the value. We have to empower teams, because empowering teams in an agile world is very important. We have to give them the tools to do things independently. If every team always has to circle back to the IT department and make requests and demands and wait for weeks and months for them to, get some attention, that's not going to work. So you really want to empower those teams to go after their goals, to do what they need to do to fulfill their part of the equation of your entire company. And in that sense, if you look at user interfaces and what they have always been, you have to understand that it's not really a match. User interfaces have, they're bespoke, different tools, different environments. They have their own bespoke user interface. They all look kind of different from different vendors with different mindsets and different philosophies. It's also linked typically to a specific data silo. I have a CRM, I have an ERP, I have a legacy offline scheduling tool, I have an IP address management tool, et cetera, et cetera. They're all linked to specific data silos. And of course, you can try to kind of make connections through APIs and all that to try to sort that out. But very quickly, you're going to build one quick spaghetti. Okay. So it's very tightly linked and coupled with the data. It's very generalized user interfaces also. Okay. The same user interface that is going to appear in your company is probably going to appear on the same product in another company, despite the fact that you have a completely different organization, a different strategy, different business models, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's very generalized. It's a one-size type of fits all. And those user interfaces typically don't really evolve very much. The new world, and you may have seen that already in other environments, is all about flexibility, okay? Saying, hey, a user interface should be tailored to the exact role of a person. It shouldn't be the old type of interface. I'm, for example, managing a fleet of OB vans. Well, in that sense, I need to have a user interface that allows me to manage that entire fleet of OB vans. And somebody in my team, for example, might be, for example, somebody who operates a OB van. He should be looking at the same user interface. He looks at those OB vans from a different perspective. So even within the same team, you have different roles, different people, different expectations. And it should be possible to display any relevant data. It's not because I'm the manager of this or that type of business that I'm not interested and it's not relevant for me to be able to see other information. I might be running an IP network, but I might benefit in my job to be able to see information coming from contracting or finance or other departments. And we want to be able to say, hey, a user interface should be able to access any data as long as it's relevant for that specific job, that specific role. So we really want to tailor it and make it really optimal for that specific function, for that specific responsibility, for that specific team, for that specific goal. The second thing that is very important is it has to be able to evolve, okay, easily and continuously, because the world around us is changing faster and faster and continuously. So what we want is not only something that is tailored to the user, we want that user to have the ability with very little effort to evolve that environment, to be able to say, hey, I can do it more efficiently tomorrow, or because of the changes in our business models, I should be doing this, et cetera, et cetera. All those external factors that influence that should empower the user to say, hey, I want to evolve my user interface. I want to organize things a little different. Or, for example, I want to bring in some extra information here from maybe another department or a different environment, as long as it's relevant. So that's a completely different dynamic. And you may have noticed that already, okay? This is what they call low-code, no-code type of environments, where you can see that in a Microsoft Office 365 environment, you can see that in a ServiceNow environment, and some of the other leading technology platforms. It's a capability where we say, hey, as a user, you can build a new app very easily, very conveniently. And we all know there's a big shortage of IT people, and you don't want to have dependencies of having to go with every team to one central IT department. No, you want to create something where with very little knowledge, people can easily do that. You click on the plus sign, and immediately you can have this very rich environment where you can create a complete structure, navigation menus, top-level navigations, drop-down menus, graphical presentations. And guess what? On the right-hand side, it doesn't look too sexy over here, but this part over here That's where the magic is. This is where I can tap into any information from that digital twin. Remember, we have the object modeling, we had the existing digital twin of DataMiner with all the technology environments that we have. So right there at my fingertips, I have any information in the company. Of course, provided I have the security and all that, but essentially everything is available there. So I can really look at this now. This is a studio manager. I can say what is relevant in this context for this user. And I can go to the right-hand side there and I can grab that data, whether that's a ticket or a piece of information from a contract or something about IP address allocation or the status of bandwidth utilization of a port or whatever it is, I have it available. And that's the power of user-definable apps. So user-definable apps is really about saying, hey, we will empower people to do what they need to do in the most efficient way. And there's a complete abstraction from the real world. So this is fundamentally different as compared to the old bespoke user interfaces linked to a specific silo of data, linked to a specific vendor with a very generalized user interface. No. Now you can give something to users that they can tailor exactly to what they want, to their need, and they can almost evolve it on a daily basis. So that's the objective here of this new generation of apps. And again, as I said, the objective, easy design and deployment. So people can create apps on the fly for whatever purpose, for whatever type of environment. It's about monitoring, but also about control front ends. So when you interact with the technology, it could be about having visibility on data, but also, for example, to have control capabilities and to be able to have a single button that gives you a sophisticated workflow to set up and orchestrate, for example, a service. And of course, again, completely vendor, technology, and domain agnostic. That's probably something you know already. Okay, easy to evolve over time. So at runtime, I can make new versions, and actually, it has a very nice, capability there where you can have an app which is already deployed by, and used by a team. But as a designer, and in the team, because typically I will work in the team, I have the ability to evolve that app. And once I'm happy with the new version, with a single click, I can provide it to the entire team. So that evolution is really seamless. Now, if you look at DataMiner apps, you can imagine it in many different worlds. Whatever type of operation you have, it could be a service provider environment, it could be a media operation, it doesn't really matter. But we have some really beautiful demos where we can show you how you can take an example where Zine is, for example, a service provider, and they work for external customers. Like, for example, over here, 2 external customers. But beautiful examples where you can see where you have that complete digital twin that models the entire environment, and where you can say, hey, I have one app where I can provide that external user the ability to make requests for new jobs, for new events. I can have an app for a central event management or planning team where they ingest and they see all the data coming in from different customers and different accounts and different requests, where they can manage and handle all the administrative stuff around that. How they can just with a single click take a new event, a new booking, and kind of split it out into jobs that go to different departments. So different departments that automatically receive requests depending on what was requested over here. So maybe 1, 2, or 3 departments will receive a request. How the data that originates over here, flows immediately, if it's relevant, within those different teams, and how they can convert it into scheduling of resources. So basically making reservation on the resources, and actually also do full automation if they want. And again, we're not going to talk about automation and orchestration, but DataMiner is one of the most powerful platforms in that respect. And this really integrates seamlessly with that automation and orchestration world, because there's a lot of people that sometimes think like, okay, let's take my offline tools where I use offline tracking of resources and try to build an API, but you're basically taking an offline, very static world where things are being done manually, and you try to connect it with a very dynamic environment that continuously changes. Over here, you don't have to spend any efforts on that. Okay, again, certain things, complexity, security, and all of that need to be by design, out of the box. Other things, that's the creative part. That's where I want to be able to intervene, my workflow, my business, etc. And you can see how those jobs, and you should see one of those demos. So you can get in touch with us. We can book a session. But all those teams have their own apps to set up a software-defined media network, for example, to plan a production, to interact with an external party for the event. And I have some examples coming up, but also, like finance teams and procurement teams, etc., how they can interact with that environment. So the apps is really where you can say, hey, this is my DataMiner system, and you can see a screen capture here. In that DataMiner system, all these apps that you see over here, okay, could have been designed by yourself. So you have basically taken your operation, you have digitized it by using our object modeling to model your operation. You have built and designed your workflows. And on top of that, you can say, hey, for different teams, for different people with different perspectives, I want to create the ultimate user interface with all the information they want, with everything that they need. So, and gradually over time, you can actually build up a very powerful environment of, a variety of different types of apps for different people, for different teams. So it's perfectly possible that if I go to one desk, I will see something like this, where somebody is kind of registering new contracts, a new contract that is in draft, which is approved, which is expired, whatever it may be, with price books and rate cards and exchange rates that we might be pulling even off the internet, whatever it may be, okay, a cost and rating app. And I could be going over to another desk and I could see, for example, HR, entering data or managing data about people, about teams, about organizations. And in this case, for example, maybe those people need to be used as part of our service offering. So in other words, I'm interested to know about skills. I'm interested to know about expertise of the team. So you can see that over here, for example, how expertise and skills are part of the modeling actually, and how these users actually are not just an administrative component, but they're actually considered resources that are part of our automation and orchestration later on. But that's kind of maybe the experience or the perspective from a manager or an HR team, for example. And you could be swiveling over and looking at it from a user perspective. I want to be able to order services from that organization. We built an app for that user. That user can log in online and have a very rich experience about all the different requests that they have made for that organization. And they can look at all the different requests, what state those requests are in, and be able to basically take all the information they have and bring it into that workflow. So that's the external experience, for example, somebody looking at it and making a request online. And while they are looking at this, we will see, how this can flow into different teams across different organizations, but how that end user can still get full visibility automatically of the status of that request, for example. Where is it in that entire value chain? You could be swiveling over to another team, maybe an event management team that basically receives requests from different vendors and different users or different customers, for example. And all those are coming in and they need to be planned. And they have their own environment where they combine all the information to plan and schedule all those different events, maybe do some administrative things around that. And as soon as they finished and basically as part of, at some point in the workflow, this might split up. This might split up and go to different teams in different directions. Okay, for example, here, this could be a team that manages an all IP network and does contribution. And as part of that request that we saw that came in, we need to allocate certain bandwidth and certain connectivity from between two cities. That request is going to pop up in this app and people will take it there and basically manage that. And all the data that is important for them is continuously flowing from one environment into another environment. And they can go in and obviously they have a different perspective. They would see all the jobs they do for many events across the entire ecosystem and also internal jobs maybe. So they have a different perspective on that. Maybe the engineers of that team, they're not really interested in what I just showed you. They're more interested into a real picture of the network that they need to troubleshoot and maintain and support. So their app is going to be much more about the technology perspective on this and a completely different angle on this. Again, another app, another environment. And maybe there's also, somebody who's interested in looking at details about IP address allocations, okay? And everything is nicely centralized and managed in a single app, and everybody can use that app for whom it's relevant. And maybe it's not only about an IP contribution, maybe we need to do a production also for that company. So in that case, there's another app in another environment, in another team, where that information is also coming in and being translated into, for example, a production. And they can go ahead and they can do whatever they need, to plan and allocate resources. And that could even be people, not only technology resources, and basically do their business and focus on what they need to deliver as part of that. And again, whatever they do and whatever the status is of their part of the chain, that's also going to be reflected back upward into the chain. So actually everybody from the event planning team, and if you want the end user, everybody is going to get real-time updates from their perspective. Again, you can be really creative. I saw a very nice example here where, people start using object modeling to model, for example, a virtual desk, rather than, this is more with remote work and all of that, but where you model a remote desk so people can work from home, but certain resources, cloud resources and bandwidth and capacity and hardware resources on-prem are basically allocated to that specific person and to that specific job in the environment. And maybe, after the event, we have some recordings that need to be processed or file-based assets. And you could have a team managing all those file-based assets and managing that entire workflow and looking at how all of these people are basically working and having their own perspective. Maybe I have an overview of all the different assets. I can go and see maybe all the details, of all those files, where they are in that flow. Maybe I'm going to leverage that flow to optimize the utilization of my resources and maybe send some of those files to on-prem transcoding resources I have. And maybe sometimes it needs to go to a cloud provider to do on-demand transcoding to balance my budgets and all of that. All of that is essentially in there, okay? All of that is flowing from one environment to another in a seamless fashion, and people can really focus on what they want, what they need. Again, here, maybe as part of this, we're also using OB vans, okay? And the manager may have an overview of the entire pool of all the OB vans and managing the capabilities and the schedules of the entire fleet and have an overview of that entire fleet, okay? And when they are being used and by whom they are being used. But then again, if you're a driver of an OB van, I don't want to know about the entire fleet of OB vans. So for me, they kind of made a nice, little app that allows me to do a check-in. And the fact that I do a check-in is something, this information is a state that can be used again to trigger other workflows to make sure, for example, people in the MCR or the NOC have visibility that effectively, okay, somebody checked in and is on site, for example. So again, different people, different roles, different perspectives. And you can make a lot of beautiful presentations. And I'm just going to swivel through this because every desk that you go, every person, every role, this is plant maintenance. People that don't care about different parts of the operation, they have to do plant maintenance, so they can book time slots, so they can do upgrades and all of that. And maybe other people will be more focused on how the processes run across the entire organization. What is the efficiency of the processes? Where are the bottlenecks in this? Where can we improve that? So you can have full visibility, whether that's a file-based workflow or an approval workflow or a booking ingest or a maintenance type of workflow or diagnostics, it doesn't matter. You have one environment where you can see all the workflows, measure the efficiency, look at the wait times, look at the processing time through an activity and all of that. You can go manage incidents. You can model incidents and manage incidents very efficiently. And if other people within their environment need to see whether there's an incident or not, they can just grab that information and bring it in there. You can do all those things. You can look at it from a statistical perspective. You can look at it from a planning perspective and so many different angles. And of course, you could also make pure technology apps. Okay, it's not only about the administrative or the other types of environments. It's also about saying, hey, I want to have a little app that allows me to manage all my servers. The guys that do the file-based ingest, they're complaining about, for example, some issues with transcoding and some delays in there. Well, those guys, the engineering teams, they have a small app. They can pull up all the data from all the servers that are involved underlying on that transcoder platform and start analyzing and doing diagnostics. Or maybe, one of the colleagues is going to look at the cloud environment and say, hey, in our Azure environment, I want to drill down. I want to go in there, and maybe filter down to the Arabic Emirates and basically look at our deployment there and start troubleshooting it. So more technology environments, looking at my Elastic cluster, etc., etc., etc. Satellite data. I buy satellite capacity. I need to manage that satellite capacity. Obviously, I'm going to model that. I'm going to use that as a resource. I'm going to provide the manager and the purchasing and the engineering teams their own relevant perspective on that information. The manager, for example, and I know I'm going on and on and on, but that's because we're in this spectrum of endless options and endless opportunity here. For a manager, for example, this is an SLA app that shows me availability of services, because my manager is not interested in all the details of my file-based workflows or my satellite uplinks or my contribution links or whatever type of services I provide. No, they just want to know about the performance of those services. What is the uptime? What is the compliance compared to our SLAs, et cetera, et cetera. And again, one thing I just want to emphasize here is keep in mind, you don't have to do these things, okay? These are samples, these are examples. You would adapt those samples to your world, your environment, your strategy, and maybe some portions of it, maybe also in a third-party environment already, okay? Could be Power Apps, could be a ServiceNow, could be different environments. Again, it's about creating a seamless experience, and it's perfectly possible that some of the examples I showed in the DataMiner world already exist or can be built and designed also in other environments. Again, the best tools, the best fits, open modular choices. And I think, we're going to have to probably start wrapping it up because I'm already overrunning on time. I just want to emphasize also that in addition to what I showed you, the user definable apps, we also have what we call user definable APIs. So in other words, if people say, hey, I want to interact with that digital twin, I want to interact with that data, and it could be a counterpart of any of the examples that I showed you, but I don't want to deal with an app or a user interface. I have my own software tools, okay? And I would like to leverage those software tools. What you can do with a user-definable app is what the user-definable API offers you. You can make a contract with that person, say, hey, what is it that you want? Oh, you're going to send me a service ID, and this is the information that you want to display information in your app, in your own environment. Well, you can whip up a user-definable API on that digital twin, literally in just a few minutes, okay? Depending a little bit on the complexity and all that. But really, in no time, you can take a requirement, an expectation for somebody, and deliver that rather than through a user-definable app, through a user-definable API. And to say to your colleague, to your customer, here's an API that does exactly what you want. You can send us the service ID. We're going to send you this and this information. So user-definable APIs are also a very powerful part of the proposition. So I'm going to have to flip through this a little bit because, again, just to wrap it up, it's really about empowering people to create, to design, to evolve. Okay, it's about having a very open ecosystem, an open ecosystem that gives people modular options, gives them the options to use any data that they want, to be part of any workflows that seamlessly go from anywhere to anywhere, even across boundaries from different organizations, for people not to have to be too concerned about security and complexity and all of that. No, as a matter of fact, as soon as things are plugged into that digital twin, there's that one location where I can start grabbing the data and play with the data. So you can even empower non-engineering teams, not really programming teams, but pretty much any team in your organization can be empowered to do these things on their own and not having that dependency and those long cycles to evolve the way they do things. So that's the power of it. Of course, I just want to emphasize that because we only showed you a small portion and we focused on the object modeling and the process automation and the user-definable apps, as well as the user-definable APIs. You have to realize that this is sitting on top of a DataMiner system. A DataMiner system that has an extremely powerful service and resource management capability. An automation engine that allows you to design and deliver automation and orchestration solutions that go beyond anything that you have ever seen and done in the past. And I just want to emphasize that you can start doing that today. So you don't have to integrate your entire operation and all the switches and routers and all that. You can actually also take an approach where you say, hey, for me, the priority is to start modeling my operation, okay, and to have the contracts and the rate cards and being able to track and schedule resources and not to invest too much on the automation side yet. That's an option. Again, modular choices. Some people will start with investing in automation. Other people will take a different approach. But as soon as you start with automation, I just want to emphasize that in terms of automation, we have this seamless transition from what we call resource scheduling, which comes out of the box, okay, zero effort, immediately available as soon as you start using it. And as you can grow towards more sophisticated, eventually, even if you want 100% fully automated and orchestrated environments. Again, we don't have time to go into this, but if you want to learn more about this, I definitely would like to encourage you to get in touch with this, because there's a lot of other information that we can provide you in terms of the underlying CI/CD concepts, empowering the teams that actually do coding on automation and all of that, how they can collaborate together, how you can use standard solutions like GitHub, have automatic deployments, for example, through our catalog from one system to another. So that's also a very beautiful proposition. And I would say there's actually even much more. I would say there's things like, for example, our proven track record. Okay, Skyline has been a company for over 20 years that has really continuously invested in innovation. So we do have customers today that already use the DataMiner platform since 15 years, and it's probably the only thing left in their operation that is still there from 15 years ago, because DataMiner has always evolved, has always grown. And what we're showing here now is one of the key new innovative capabilities that we have: object modeling, process automation, and those user definable apps. And again, a lot of other things. I'm not going to go through all of them because we're out of time. But for example, the fault management, as you can imagine, if you have processes and something goes wrong, or there's too much delay times or too many queues, guess what? DataMiner has very powerful fault management out of box. It's one of the functions. So we can use that to immediately trigger fault management workflows. Standardized faults that appear on the alarm console that are integrated with a ticketing system and all of that. All of those things are available out of the box, including our artificial intelligence, Teams collaboration, live online sharing, and much, much more. So I just touched upon, the essentials, let's say, of that new innovative capabilities that I talked about. I would say if you're interested, if you want to learn more, get in touch. Just drop me an email. I'll get you in touch with the right people in our organization that can show you examples and samples from your environment, your world, your type of application, and that can give you all the details about how it works and how you can do this on your own. It was great having you here, and I'm looking forward maybe to the next session. Thank you very much. Have a great day.